What is up everyone, and welcome back to another video. So in today's video, what I'm going to be showing you guys is exactly how to reduce your input delay dramatically. In this video, I'll be covering all the simplest and most effective methods that you can use to basically reduce your input delay a ton, and it should only take a couple of minutes. Before we get into it, if you find this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more, and of course if you want to show some extra support, it's always appreciated if you could use code TECHO in the item shop. It's 100% free, it only takes a few seconds to type in, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, a giant thank you to everyone who uses it. And before we get into this video, on that topic of input delay, I want to take some time to talk about today's sponsor, which is NoPing. There's no doubt that ping is one of the biggest factors that influences your input delay. Getting your ping as low as possible is one of the best ways to quickly reduce your input delay and make your game run way smoother, and that's where NoPing comes in. If you haven't heard of it, NoPing is a game tunnel network, which in simple terms means that they have their own private servers close to the Epic Game servers, and by logging into NoPing, you can actually use these servers and lower your ping dramatically. Think of it as like a direct connection to the Epic Game servers instead of jumping through a bunch of other servers. Getting a NoPing subscription gives you access to all their premium servers to lower your ping, as well as other features helping to boost your FPS, boost your keyboard responsiveness, and so much more. So if you want to reduce your ping and in turn reduce your input delay dramatically, then definitely give NoPing a shot. And if you use my link, which is going to be near the top of the description or in the pinned comment, you can try out NoPing with a free trial and make sure it lowers your ping before you pay a single dollar. So with that said, be sure to check out that link either in the top of the description or in the pinned comment. And thank you NoPing once again for sponsoring today's video. Alright guys, so I'm here in my game and we're going to go ahead and go over the best in-game settings to start out with, since obviously your in-game settings are going to have a huge impact on your input delay. So I'm basically just going to go from the top here. If you're a PC player, you're going to have the full screen option and you always want to select full screen. Windowed full screen and windowed basically both make your game like a regular window and it doesn't take the same priority. Whereas with full screen, you get the least amount of input delay and overall it's just the best. When it comes to your resolution, you're going to want to pick whatever resolution your monitor is. So mine is 1080, so I picked 1080. Obviously, if you're on stretch resolution or anything like that, you don't want to mess with this. VSync, you're always going to turn it off. It even says it in the description of the setting, which you can see on the right. It basically gives a higher frame rate and better input response if you disable it. So unless you have really bad screen tearing, which you'll probably know if you do, then turn off VSync. Frame rate limit is a pretty simple one. You just want to make that whatever your monitor is. And render mode, this is a big one. I definitely recommend you pick performance mode. The reason I recommend performance mode is simply because it gives way higher FPS. It pretty much disables most of the rendering features and it reduces the amount of CPU you use, GPU, and of course your memory. So overall, performance mode is going to be one of the biggest things you can turn on in order to get better FPS and lower input delay. In terms of this stuff right here, the brightness, user contrast, and colorblind, none of these are really going to have any impact. And getting down here to 3D resolution and the rest of this stuff, 3D resolution, I recommend you have it at 100. If you do have a really bad frame rate and really bad input delay, you can experiment with it lower. But personally, I find that especially when it's combined with performance mode, this does look pretty bad if you turn it down. So I'd recommend you try to keep it at 100%, but if you find that your input delay is still pretty bad after doing all these tips, then you can look at this. You want to turn off this nanite setting. I don't even know what this is, but I do know that it lowers your FPS. And then all this stuff you're going to want to have near and low. So pretty much all these other graphical settings. So view distance near, textures are low, and meshes are low. If you have performance mode off, you're going to see some more settings here, but obviously I have it on already. So meshes, I'm going to want to turn those to low. As well as that, guys, one quick note for my console players out there is that you are going to have a motion blur setting, and that's another setting that you're going to want to make sure you have off. Motion blur basically specifically adds more to your screen to make it look super fancy as you're moving around, and it does look smoother on your screen, so it might give you the idea that it's actually better, but really it increases your input delay dramatically and also lowers your FPS, and show FPS doesn't really make any difference. Now, finishing off these in-game settings, there's really only one more thing we want to look at, and that's going to be our replays. So you're going to want to head to the second tab right here, and you're going to scroll all the way down, and right here you're going to see all these replay options. So your replays are pretty much going to be an as you need them thing. In terms of the best performance, you're going to want to turn off replays. That's because they can actually reduce your performance and they take up space on your hard drive, which means you're going to have less room for other things. And if your hard drive's filled up, it's definitely going to cause a big impact on your performance. So generally, as you're playing the game normally, I recommend you have these off. Now, at the same time, if you're trying to VOD review, or maybe if you're playing a tournament and you want to look back at your games, or pretty much if there's any reason you might need a replay, then obviously turn them back on. But in terms of your general gameplay, if you don't see yourself needing any replays and you don't plan to VOD review the game you're doing, then have it off. And yeah, guys, that's going to be about it for all of our in-game settings. So if you set all these settings, this on its own should make a massive difference. And now we're going to go ahead and get into some other tips I have for you guys. So getting into our next tip, and this is mostly a ping tip, but obviously as we discussed earlier, ping does play a big role in your input delay. And this tip is to use an Ethernet cable regardless of what device you're on. This tip works for console, PC, and pretty much everyone else. An Ethernet cable is basically a cable that plugs directly from your device into your router, and it results in way less delay since it's a direct connection rather than Wi-Fi, which essentially floats through the air. It's pretty easy to find a good Ethernet cable. You can find one on Amazon for typically around $10. You typically want to go for like a category 5 or 6, and this is one of the biggest things that's going to reduce your ping and in turn reduce your lag in game. It's a very simple tip, but I can't tell you guys enough how important it is to use Ethernet. Seriously, if you're still using Wi-Fi, getting an Ethernet cable is going to make a giant difference. Getting into our next tip though, and this one is another tip that works for both console and PC. One big factor that determines your input delay, especially for those of you who are on console or a lower end PC, is the monitor you use. Especially if you're a console player and you play on like a TV screen or something like that, making the investment in a high quality monitor can make a massive difference. Depending on your refresh rate, you can find a great low input delay monitor, usually for anywhere between $80 to a couple $100, but obviously those couple $100 ones are for the top end PCs. But for a 120 Hz monitor, which is for new gen consoles, you can find it for typically around 100 to 120 US dollars. Obviously that's a lot of money to dish out, but if it's going to make your gameplay way better for years, then I think it's worth it to dish out the money. I recommend getting a monitor with a 1 millisecond response time, which should be in the title of the monitor. It should say 1 ms, and this should reduce your input delay dramatically if you currently play on a cheaper monitor or if you play on a TV screen. A lot of TV screens have upwards of 50 to 100 milliseconds of input delay on their own, and that's not even to mention the input delay in your game or in your device, so it can make a huge difference if you get a monitor. So for you console players out there, or even for you PC players who haven't looked into gaming monitors yet, this can be a massive help, and I definitely recommend you at least consider it. Getting into our next tip though, and this one is just going to be for PC players, and this one is to set Fortnite to high priority. The way to do this is pretty simple. You want to start out by going to your task manager, and once you get into your task manager, you're going to go to the details tab, and you're going to scroll down until you see Fortnite client-win64-shipping.exe. You're going to right click that, you're going to select priority, and you're going to set your priority to high. This is basically going to stop anything in the background from taking precedent over Fortnite and taking away from Fortnite's resources, since it makes it the highest priority app. Especially if you have other things running in the background that may be taking away from it, this is going to make a huge difference. And while you're here, you can also head to the same app. You want to right click and select properties, compatibility tab, and then you're going to turn disable full screen optimizations on. Finally, you go to change high DPI settings, and under the high DPI scaling override, you're going to want to set that to application. And overall, this should help you out a bunch. Getting into our next tip though, and this one is going to be in your launcher settings. In the actual Epic Games launcher, you can do a quick step that's going to clear up space on your PC and probably improve your performance to some extent. You're going to want to start off by opening your Epic Games launcher as you normally would. Go to the 3 dots next to Fortnite and go to options. From there, once you're in options, you're going to want to disable high resolution textures and disable DirectX 12 shaders, as both of these take up a lot of space and shouldn't apply to you. Obviously, if you follow the tips we went over earlier, you're not going to be playing on DirectX 12, and high resolution textures, we obviously don't want our stuff to be super high resolution, otherwise it's going to cause our FPS to plummet. And one other thing you can do is disable Save the World if you don't play Save the World and you have no intention of doing so. I'm personally going to keep that installed because I do play it once in a while and I have some good memories on there. But if you guys don't play Save the World and you never intend to, then go ahead and turn that off too. And overall, this is going to clear up a bunch of space on your hard drive and probably make your game run smoother, especially if your hard drive is near the top. So overall, that should help you out a bunch. Getting into our next tip for PC players, and this one is to update your drivers. Updating your drivers is going to keep your graphics up to date. There's a lot of updates in Fortnite and a lot of updates to the actual NVIDIA or AMD software. And this stuff, if you don't have it updated, you can have a lot of input delay, a lot of lag, and you can even have frame drops or freezes. I actually did have this a couple of months ago, and updating my drivers fixed it. And for PC players, to update your drivers, it's super simple. All you want to do is hop into your browser and you want to search for the drivers of your graphics card. So since I have a GTX 1080 in my computer, I would just look up GTX 1080 drivers NVIDIA or something like that. You should be led to the NVIDIA or AMD website, and then you simply want to put in which graphics card you have, and you should be able to download your appropriate drivers super easily. It might take a little while to download them. A lot of them are pretty big files, but it should be a huge help. And this should help reduce FPS drops, input lag, and pretty much anything else that relates to your game being out of sync with your drivers. Updating your drivers is definitely going to make a huge difference if you haven't done it in a while, so definitely do that. And finally guys, getting into the last tip of this video and my final tip for you PC players, and this one is a very simple tip, which is to do a virus scan. I can't tell you guys how often this happens, but sometimes, especially if you visit some shady websites, oftentimes you can end up having malware on your PC or things that just shouldn't be there, stuff that it takes up your resources. I've even seen people with like crypto miners on their PC, which are basically just hogging up all the resources and draining their PC. So it's super important that you do a virus scan to figure out if you actually have any of this stuff, because this stuff can make a massive difference. And especially if you suddenly got input delay or something like that, which you didn't have before, there's a chance that you actually unintentionally downloaded something that's really bad. So definitely do a virus scan to make sure that there's nothing on your PC that's causing you to lag excessively. Personally, I recommend the software Malwarebytes. And really, I would go through all the steps here, but it's super simple. You basically just go to the website, you download it, and you do the quick scan. Depending on your PC, it might take less or more time, but generally it only takes a couple of minutes. And from there, you'll be able to see if you have any malware. You can quarantine it if you want to, or if you don't have anything, then you can rest assured that that's not the problem. So if you find yourself having input lag, definitely make sure you do a virus scan just to be safe. But with all that said, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on how to dramatically reduce your input delay in Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 3. Overall, all the tips in this video should help you dramatically, and hopefully by doing all these tips, you should see a big improvement. If you found this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more, and of course, if you want to show some extra support, it's always appreciated if you would use code TECHO in the item shop. It's 100% free for you. It only takes a few seconds to type in, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. As always, a giant thank you to everyone who uses it. And finally, guys, let me know down in the comments what videos you want to see next on the channel. I'm always open to recommendations, and I'm trying to post a lot this season, so definitely let me know. But with all that said, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.